Hi, Miles. So thank you so much for taking the time to be here with me. And so I'll introduce a little bit myself, and then I'd like to invite you to introduce yourself as well. Obviously, whoever knows me, my name is Alina, and I've been on the journey of enlightenment, on the journey of somatic transformation, the journey of integration and embodiment for quite many years right by now. And this is my favorite topic, and my probably one driver through most of my life was the word and the energy of transformation. So it excites me. It's my passion. It's my inner journey. It's my outer sharing and offering. And that is what excited me to connect with you at some point, Miles, through our online realm of social connection so far. But it was so fascinating to just jump and dive into very profound transformation and profound liberation that I saw you are teaching as well as embodying. So perhaps you can introduce yourself and we can see where it goes.
Sounds good. Firstly, thank you for having me today, Alina. I believe that nothing happens by accident, and from a particular vantage point, everything is meant to be. And right now, in this moment, the word that's resonating deeply with me is capital T, transformation. And part of my background is heavily rooted in transformation on a variety of different levels, particularly because I used to be predominantly in the wellness industry, in the fitness space, helping people with their own transformations of body, mind, and spirit. But it all really began fundamentally with my own transformation, losing 120 pounds. And I always like to tell people that I had to lose myself physically to eventually find myself physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, and energetically.
Wow.
And that the human journey fundamentally is this journey of duality and paradox where we go to one end of the spectrum. In my case, it was losing myself to then go through a portal to end up at the other end of the spectrum where I ended up finding myself in my physical, mental, emotional, spiritual, and energetic transformation. So that's where it all started for me in the physical realm, so to speak.
Wow. This is very powerful, the journey you went through. It's and then not an easy one. It takes lots of courage, dedication, and commitment, and probably like really hitting rock bottom to really start questioning and start embarking on such a journey. Because yeah, it's just what you're saying, and where you found yourself, where you lost yourself, is probably stands on a lot of repression, perhaps a lot of disconnection. Can you talk a little bit about your journey, perhaps sharing like where, maybe even not before, and what brought you into that questioning your reality, but what was the pain that you were living in? Can you describe a little bit about that?
Yes, absolutely. The pain I was living in, I think what you highlighted there is very important because behind the curtain, there is always some type of pain or pains with an S at the end, living there, lurking, that are influencing us in ways mostly unknown and some ways known. And for me, that pain, because I've done a lot of inner work, so I've gone deep, and I'm not going to say I peeled away a lot of layers of the onion. These days, I like to say I scraped away a lot of icing from the layers of the cake. Sounds a lot better. So, what I discovered, interestingly, was that from childhood, unbeknownst to me at the time, when my prefrontal cortex was not developed and I was just like a sponge absorbing the environment, I ingrained certain beliefs that were rooted in insecurity
Mm,
and lack of confidence in self.
yeah,
And I wasn't cognizant of it per se, but
yes.
it ruled and governed my life subconsciously. And I navigated Earth, so to speak, with this being an energy, an underlying energy moving me through time and space. And that insecurity caused me to put on a lot of weight as a shield, as a protective mechanism to hide. And I realized later on, as I went deep into these layers of the icing, that in survival mode, fight, flight, freeze, or facade, we basically create an orchestra of the four in some way, shape, or form at different times. And for me, the hiding aspect, hiding from my true authentic self behind this shield of weight that I put on, was how I hid from the world and felt safe and comfortable.
Wow. Yeah. Yeah. I could totally relate to hiding part. Yeah. It just shows up differently for different people, right? I mean, my hiding way from the world, from myself, pretty much the fear of being myself was more in codependency and just an ability to really show up, an ability to speak, an ability to use my voice, and just completely muted pretty much and silenced. So this is was my way of hiding. So I can really relate, not necessarily on this particular shield that you put. I had my own shield. It's just like we all, yeah, have something that, and how interesting it is that those shields, if they're like really paid attention to, its intelligence in its own way, really in our faces to show us that there is more to just this muffled way of living.
Absolutely. And in what you said, to draft on your wisdom, I believe the light side of hiding behind the shield is that we have the unique human experience opportunity to find ourselves. And this goes back to the opening statement that I made about my journey, losing self to find self. Within our survival reflexes of the shield to hide and defend, and the sword to prove and fight, behind those curtains is great wisdom for those with curious eyes and the courage to look.
So beautiful. I like how you actually pointed to both directions. And I always speak to my clients or people I work with, and even people in great with great success. Sometimes what starts to happen is just this constant chasing and never knowing how to stop. And the other side also is disconnection from life, right? That hiding that can masquerade as maybe even depression and in some more difficult moments. But it's both are actually standing on this inner dissatisfaction or inner lie about ourselves of that I found as this worthlessness we believe about ourselves. And it can go in both directions, right? So it's either really trying to succeed in life and like really overachieving and constantly not stopping to overachieve and then getting exhausted, burned out. And some people, some of my clients end up in hospitals just from exhaustion. And then some others that I have to really nurture more carefully is the ones that are disconnecting, but both are actually standing on this deep unconscious repression of themselves. Yeah,
Mm,
so it's quite interesting what
absolutely.
you're pointing. Yeah.
Absolutely. What's coming up for me in the moment with what you just beautifully shared, and it's one of the beliefs that I've connected into, particularly as of late, but in the last few years, is what if consciousness is so intelligent that it can orchestrate wounds in our childhood to later be accessed as portals when we're older to transmute that quote unquote trauma energy into great creative forces to build the reality that we're living in, the 3D construct? What if that's true?
Yes, and I have such an inner testimony to all of that because, and I've been seeing over the years working with clients, it's just, it's what we're given is exactly the needed, precise blueprint to activate, right? Our shadows. So what we need is exactly that specific imprint, I would say imprint, that from that imprint, we're able to actually tap into our blueprint, which is imprint is just that trauma, the energies, the conditioning. Just to come back, so I feel what you just said is so true because I'm not very religious about what I'm going to talk about right now, but I found it's extremely accurate. And probably you've heard about gene keys. And it's
Mhm.
that where our actual spiritual kind of more profile or blueprint of our energy manifestation. It's interestingly enough that it goes through the shadow aspect turning into our gift and then into our superpower. So I'm not going to go into detail about what is it exactly for me or what are my shadows, my gifts, but it's definitely the trajectory, everything you just said about. It's definitely the trajectory that goes from that shadow. And when we really integrate that shadow and this connection, this separation, whatever it is, in my case, like that fear of being myself. So when we really integrate that, for me and losing my voice, actually now this is what I'm offering women, or this is what I'm offering people, is how to connect to their authentic expression. So therefore, transmuting it within myself, I'm helping to transmute that within my clients, whatever it is for them. And looking at you and your physique, I can say you tapped into your gift from your shadow as well. Maybe you can talk a little bit about that.
I love the topic of tapping into your gift from your shadow. I always say that for those who are courageous to venture into the catacombs, you will find great treasures of light there if you go deep on these shadow aspects and elements. And for me, the fitness journey of losing myself physically to find myself on a multitude of other levels was just one cycle to be able to uncover and discover aspects of self. And had I not lost myself, I wouldn't have discovered those aspects. And the more time that passed, more and more shadow cycles emerged where there was a descent followed by a subsequent ascension, essentially expanding into more gifts, talents, and abilities each time. I see it like a washing machine. You go into the washing machine, you get spun around on this merry-go-round of the spiral of existence, and then you pop out a little bit wet and exhausted and tired to go into the dryer, the integration period, and then finally you come out like a nice fluffy blanket, reborn, and you're ready to rock and roll with this
Mhm.
new version of yourself, one step closer
Yeah.
to your authentic self.
Mm.
And I believe it's really a journey back to authenticity. And I really would love to additionally draft off your wisdom, talking about what you do in your community, helping people connect more into their authentic selves. Authenticity is the name of the game, shedding those layers of the cake to reveal more and more of who we really are versus who parts of us think we are. And the most challenging aspect of that journey is the more and more we reveal our light, the brighter we are and the more people can see us. And paradoxically, we are, at least in our own mind, from our own perception, more subject to the judgment of others. And very often it's easier to stay small in this conformed version of selves, adapting to other people where you know you'll at least be safe and accepted in a predictable and familiar way, versus listen to your inner voice and music, truly be yourself, walk and march in your truth unapologetically and confidently, and risk being rejected by the tribe around you. It's a real conundrum to be trapped in.
Oh my gosh, that was beautiful. Yeah, thank you so much for this because this is you just described the whole journey, right? And at the same time, if we haven't descended into that washing machine to feel all those pains that we carry deeply unconsciously within ourselves, and at the end, if I can just kind of elaborate a little bit deeper on what that pain is that we're so afraid of looking into deeper and saying yes to deep feeling of our traumas and our past that are in the way of our light and that is basically dimming or obscuring our, I would just say, integral incarnation, total incarnation of ourselves. I would say it's at the end sums up to fear of rejection. So our actually our shells, no matter what is the mechanism, because we all carry a little bit slightly different mechanism of survival. So the ego, I translate ego as body, mind, survival mechanism. It's a protector energy that helps us not get crushed by a car, but unfortunately, in childhood, when dangerous situations or different traumas, or we were not loved enough, not seen enough, not validated enough. So it closes down upon itself, and it finds these survival strategies that it builds unconsciously within itself and builds this protection around. But what it is protecting itself from is actually being rejected, is actually being abandoned, is actually not belonging. If I can draw, like, over working somatically with people, if I can draw this kind of a layered cake that happens, and so we go and we find almost immediately, we can find a deficient identity. It's just an illusion we believe about ourselves. So when we go even deeper through that, we can call it inner child, right? It's like a vulnerable energy that believes in its unworthiness. So deep down you go, and there's repressed emotions actually underneath that we had to repress because we couldn't be too loud or take too much space, or maybe we were called like stupid or not intelligent enough. So we created stories, right? Something happened, and in that moment, we religiously, so to say, unconsciously continued the story inside ourselves. But inside, underneath the deep repressed emotions, there is frozen fear. And the frozen fear is actually afraid of being rejected. So it's interestingly enough, we're walking around masking ourselves to belong so that we somehow can be accepted by the society and everyone else. But we're actually inside, we feel split and empty because we're carrying this frozen fear, and we're always in separation and in disconnection from others, hoping to receive more love. There's this unmet need inside, hoping to receive more love, more connection, but extremely afraid of disconnection and rejection. So here we are, afraid to be ourselves, to be rejected, and yet internally we always walk with a rejection and this constant fear of it. So it's very paradoxical. If we don't look carefully, we carry these inner structures that basically prevent us from being ourselves due to the fear of being rejected. So if we go there consciously and able to descend and look in all the unconscious material and let yourself feel rejected, okay, let it feel true, and then come to neutrality with that, then you can also understand that all of that fear, it's just like a ghost living in your system, that you are the vast space in which everything is arising, right? And so when you, through this process, understand that you are the seer, you are the witness, you are the space in which everything comes and goes, then you are not afraid anymore of just frequencies arising, and maybe they're intense, right? Like you're saying, that washing machine, maybe it's intense, but it's intense for a brief moment. The fear of that intensity, it's much more intense than the actual process. The unconscious anticipation of meeting our depths and our meeting our inner split, meeting our deficient identities and frozen fears, that fear of actually feeling that is what perpetuates us to distract ourselves and to numb ourselves and disconnect from ourselves. And that terrible disease, I would say, just not the disease, it's an intelligence, but it's also like when it's a little bit overdue. That's the word, maybe. And it feels like it's a disease already that needs to be healed. And it's pretty much that disconnection from ourselves, disconnection from our inner world, disconnection from God, from source, from vitality, from all of those beautiful things you found by going into that washing machine. And yeah, and that is the invitation. We're much more afraid of what is not so terrifying. It's uncomfortable, yes, to sit with the guilt and the shame and the disgust and all of those things. Rejections, to sit with rejection. And yet it's so needed. so that you can be that fluffy blanket.
I love how you brought that full circle. Thank you so much for sharing those beautiful words. For those who have ears to hear, there is so much wisdom there to unpack. The two things that really stood out for me, the word repression, which for me becomes these unconscious obsessions that we're oblivious to. And the quote I think of immediately, and I'm going to paraphrase it because I don't remember the exact words, is from Carl Jung, which is, if you do not make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. These frozen
Love that.
fears that are hidden below the surface. And I love the word frozen fear because frozen alludes to numb, and we numb ourselves out from these deep repressed emotions to be able to navigate the literal realm and belong in matter and survive, but at the cost of the deepest and fullest expression of our authentic selves. So the journey to find ourselves authentically comes from the masks of inauthenticity, which is paradoxical, that we have to first not be ourselves at some level and interact in the 3D realm through experience to then learn how not to do it, to discover and uncover how to do it,
Mm.
to discover these frozen fears that are below the surface and repressed. And many are called, few are chosen. It's hard to go deep. It's hard to go deep diving into the catacombs and reveal these hidden aspects of self. And similar to the work that you're doing and the work that I do with people, we go deep behind the curtain and behind the curtain. We go to see the Wizard of Oz and then the Wizard of Oz behind the Wizard of Oz.
Yeah.
And there are just layers and layers. And it really, I see it in my mind almost like a placenta, that the outer sac, so to speak, is the container of self. And then you have all these branches of circulation that are present there that are our ecosystem of our parts and pieces for us to uncover and discover. And as we go behind the curtain and we shed light on these different areas and we illuminate them, by shedding light, we also dissolve the darkness and we contribute more to our total light body of expressing who we are. It's not an easy journey, but clearly it's by design because the human experience for everyone, everyone's included in this, there's no one who's an exception to this, is to go through the shadows and the darkness and the inauthenticity to be able to hopefully find self. Not everybody finds self, and there's no right, wrong, good, bad way to do this existence, but the people who have a deep calling in their soul to express more, those are the people who are really called to work with people like yourself, like myself, to be able to discover who they truly are versus who they think they are.
Yeah, beautiful. First of all, the placenta part, wow, you know about placenta. I was a doula, so like I dealt with placentas very close. But anyway, what you were sharing with me and what came up is just the actual part of as perhaps the readiness you're talking about. And
Mm,
what I do feel a lot of people, and maybe it's a little bit different from you for you, but I do feel that you probably will resonate with what I'm going to say right now. I do feel a lot of people can go shop around for experiences in order to try to find themselves. And unfortunately, there's like a huge arena right now with information and modalities, and there's so much out there that can actually just be another label to add to yourself. And I did this and I did that. And all of that is wonderful. And it's probably building somewhat your resilience, or maybe it's maybe regulates your nervous system a little bit. I receive people that done tons of retreats and tons of things and tons of medicinal plants and so on. And what's missing? And I would say what's missing, you didn't go deep enough. Maybe you went deep enough in maybe some ayahuasca journey or something like that, but I was just a window. How about integration every day in everyday life? So for me, it's very important to really pay attention that it's not just about those portals or those blissful experiences of knowing yourselves for a moment because the teacher, because the group energy, whatever it is, right? This experience is going to close. And everything else that we're so used to operate and run unconsciously on that fuel of unmet needs and repressed emotions and repressed self and so on is going to be back. So in my case, in working one-on-one with clients, as much as it could be extremely powerful and extremely beautiful and needed, what I also found is an integrative journey is needed, learning the tools, meeting themselves when they get triggered, when they get off the track. It's also having the deeper sessions, perhaps one-on-one. How do we go somatically deeper into the repression world, where it's not just an experience that we acquire from outside, like kind of shopping, spiritual shopping, but actually start asking and being curious, like why I'm not in my expression and in my abundance and living my dream life, so to say. Like, what is going on? I'd like to speak to those people that done the work and they're sitting there with on the edge questioning, wow, is it going to be yet another course or yet another coach or yet another modality? No, it's about something that perhaps they were missing, and it is going deeper into the deep unconscious so that they can really face the core that is preventing them from really truly being free and authentic. You find something like that when you work with people?
The word that comes up immediately that you highlighted that I have to speak to is integration. Integration is the missing thread in the tapestry of self that we're attempting to weave as we do the inner work. We are opening portals of discovery to bring awareness to aspects of self that are hidden. And once these portals are open, they're like chakras. Energy is moving through them, and that energy needs to be anchored. And if that energy isn't anchored, that energy cycles back into itself and the portal closes to some degree. Most people that do retreats and workshops will have profound experiences. And yes, there are changes and shape shifting at the subtle level energetically, even without integration. We're always taking steps forward in any type of personal work, but the space to integrate is very often left out. I know people who've done great journeys to the UK, going to Stonehenge, Glastonbury Tour, all these amazing places, and then on Monday go back to the office and they miss that beautiful integration period for the energy to move through the physical and energetic bodies and to have those emotions move as well to uncover and discover other things as it moves through the field. So that integration is really key, and most people are missing out on that. And some people are going so deep without integration, they are untethered in the sense of you're going 10,000 leagues under the sea and you don't have enough oxygen to go down there, and you don't have any cord properly bringing you back to the surface. And you can go so deep that you get lost if you go to the bottom of trying to discover self without micro integrations along the step curve as you're exploring self. You got to go down, then integrate, and then really actually before you go down, apply.
Yeah, yeah. Exactly. This is a great topic. What I started to create from just moving away from just simply one-on-one sessions, I'm teaching in groups right now, especially women. So what I created is based on 3 pillars, which is very fundamental really for that integration process. So one is embodied wholeness. So really waking up on the level of the mind of all the identities we buy into, all the lies we got attached to, the noise in the head. So there are many yogic ancient technologies that can help with that. And then somatically clearing our body. So somatic alchemy, just really diving deep into repressed emotions and really unrepressing literally the frozen fear and the shame and all of those aspects of deficiency that we've been carrying around. And then the other very important aspect, I call it manifesting your legacy. But what I mean by that is a big name. But what is really implying is like you take this to every day. So whatever you were afraid of doing, feel the fear and do it anyway, kind of thing, like kind of exposure therapy is so needed, but within a container of support. So it's where you see I myself, when I went through the journey, and I'm like very privileged to be teaching for the past 5 years or so within the modality of somatic work that I was doing is Kilobi inquiries, repression inquiries right now. And what helped me to first use the tools on myself, then have the community of support. Then I became a certified facilitator, then a training assistant, then I became a trainer. And basically, I've been teaching and training people for a while using and learning these tools. Why am I saying that? Because for me, it was in the important three elements. I was already awake on the level of the mind. So it was very present and very quiet. So just presence was here. And yet my body was still conditioned. So
Mm.
the tools help me with deconditioning the body. So clearing the slate, deprogramming pretty much. When you deprogram, but the actual structure of the foundation of the modality in the community where I was doing that became a self actualization platform. I knew I wanted to teach, but I didn't. My voice was swallowed. I couldn't speak. I couldn't speak, especially in big groups of people. Doing videos was absolutely impossible. So anyway, so it was moving one step forward toward what it is exactly that I wanted to do, which is teaching, and then sitting with all the unprocessed like shame and fear and disconnection still rising up, and then meeting with skillfully with the tools, right? So these three elements for quite some time helped me gain the confidence and the freedom and the ability to fully be myself within a safe container of integration. And now, the past year, I can fully be myself, not just the somatic therapist, but now I can be on my own as a mystic, as a yogi, as all of these other interesting energies that flow through me. So, so I feel like what you're saying is so important. And I think that's what we're missing, like more containers, whether it's one-on-one or in groups, of actually living integration day by day, because resistance energies are so strong and they have such a big gravity, and therefore they're constantly hijacking and self-sabotaging ourselves out of our own freedom. And so it's very important to pay attention to that.
Experience is the name of the game in Earth School. Everything that's intellectual bounces around in the mind, so to speak. But ultimately, at the end of the day, you have to put the pedal to the metal and bring what's going on up here and down within the depths of self into the human experience. And it's through experience that we ultimately transmute the energy. So you can come to a concept intellectually, but as you were alluding to, having it also experienced somatically and viscerally, and to be able to integrate the head brain, the heart brain, and the gut brain within the construct of the body to go through the human experience of having all of that energy move through us. It's a process, it's a journey, and community is an important part of that, to be able to be surrounded both by like-minded people as well as people who have done inner work and are resonating at a certain frequency and vibration, which creates keys in our energetic field for us to begin unlocking aspects of self safely and opening up vulnerably, knowing that we're supported in a container.
So beautifully said. I always talk about we've been worshiping the intellect for so many years, and we totally forgot about our intuition, the language of the heart, and the language of the gut instinct. So, like when you highlighted the three levels of integration, and it's very important, and mm, it's almost fundamental actually to reawaken on those levels, because that's when the whole, I call it the fully awakened, fully human, comes together, and therefore life becomes magical playfulness,
Mm,
effortlessly weaving itself like this. It's just wonderful. Mm-hmm.
absolutely. When you merge both worlds, that's when you find the unity point of harmony,
Mm-hmm.
where you transcend duality and something emerges greater than the sum of the parts. That's the magical and mystical experience of being a human being. The joy and pain of separation to then find unity with a new version of self, and then separation again and back to unity. And that for me is the infinity symbol, where we go from a point of unity on a loop journey of
Yeah.
separation back to unity, and then we go in the other direction. And essentially, we are pumped energetically through space and time in a physical incarnation.
So while we're being human, I think I would love to wrap up with this. While we're being on this human journey, the body is the portal, really. And you're probably can really attest to that, being your journey being body based as well as a portal for you. And so I feel this is a little bit maybe a forgotten element. So I would like to invite people to get out of the heads for a moment, even just for a brief moment, and reconnect for just even a pause of 2 minutes, just sitting and connecting. What is it I'm running away from? Yeah. So at least they can feel what it is that they're trying to numb, escape from, or even achieve somewhere out there where it's actually the portal is right here.
I love that. The portal is the body. I wholeheartedly resonate with that, not just because of my background in physical fitness, but seeing how the body is truly an anchor for both the mind and the soul. We move through space and time through the physical vehicle. Without a physical vehicle, we could not have our fullest and deepest expression of spirit. And to not be in the body is equivalent to being a chicken with its head cut off. You're running around oblivious and unconscious to what's really transpiring within self. But to sit there and to have a moment to pause, to breathe, to slow down and connect back into the body, that becomes a portal to connect into spirit and the emotions and feel. And you have to feel it to heal it. And after you felt it, you can go take that energy to have an experience. And it's the experience with the awareness of the feeling that leads to the healing. And then you go and have another experience to apply everything that you've integrated. And for me, the integration process really not comes to an end, that's not the right way to put it, but really gets fulfilled when you apply the lessons learned from the painful consequences of your own self deception.
Oh, that's a lovely line at the end there. Yes, definitely. Self deception, or I always talk about abandoning ourselves. It's, but we have to lose us, as you're saying, to find us. How beautiful is that? Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. And so to wrap up, what do you really do? What's your offerings? How do you offer this deep work to people? Can you talk a little bit about that?
Absolutely. Thanks for asking. I was in the fitness space for around 20 years, building a brick and mortar fitness business in Montreal, Quebec, Canada. I moved on from that successfully to pursue other endeavors, first in what I called intuitive business coaching and consulting, which was my kind of transition between the world of business and then the new world that I'm deeply rooted in now for the last 2 years, which focuses primarily and predominantly on what I call intuitive coaching and channeling. My mother is actually a channeler, trans channeler. She acquired this gift over 40 years ago. So I grew up in a household where channeling was normal. It was a part of my DNA and it was a part of my early childhood experience. So from a very young age, I knew the world was not as it seemed. Little did I know that seeds were being planted within my soul when I was a child to later access them when I was older and had the consciousness to be able to water these seeds and watch them bloom and blossom with my own version of connecting into the energy that my mom channels. So fundamentally in the service that I do, I hold space for people to be their own teachers. I speak words that their higher self and their soul and their essence teaches me to speak for them, that come through me, that aren't mine, for their own enlightenment and illumination to reveal what's behind the curtain, to reveal these blockages that we all experience, the repeating patterns of energy, and how life might not align with our preferences and desires, and how we can transcend that to tap more into our gifts, talents, and abilities and bring more of our authentic self to the world. So in this coaching, I do it one-on-one at this time. Maybe down the road, there will be some group stuff, but I have great fulfillment in working with people in a solo fashion to really create a container, a very powerful container for one soul to expand. And that's pretty much what I do right now. And it's very rewarding, very fun. And every session I do, I'm learning because truthfully, 80% of the words that come through me, I have no idea what I'm going to say. They're definitely not mine. And I'm surprised every single time.
Wow. Fascinating. What a beautiful history also, and your mom sharing that gift with you from very beginning. And what a blessing. That's so beautiful, very powerful. And I can
Yeah.
totally relate to what you said, where it's it's really about their journey, and therefore whatever they need, even though I have a modality and a technique, but it's really meeting the person exactly as they are, and it's their
Mm,
inner world that will bring about everything that they need to hear, everything that they need to. So for me, it's just like asking the right questions for them to ask themselves, so that they pretty much can get all the information and all the energetic unfoldment that they need to go through. So can totally relate to. I'm not doing anything. Yeah, it's just we all have that code within ourselves to wake up to ourselves. So it's like, how can we be a great mirror to that with whatever modality? So wonderful.
100%. And the word mirror was popping up for me, to be the mirror for others to discover those aspects of themselves. And we can only be those mirrors for others by going on our own journeys of exploration and self discovery and doing the inner work and the shadow work to reveal more of our light. And for me, that's what a mirror really is, it's a portal of light. And that reflection activates, just like two tuning forks at the same frequency and vibration, us as mirrors of light activate within others their light at that frequency and vibration. And they start to get to have the opportunity to perceive that light that was always there that they couldn't see. They needed an igniter. And
Mhm.
that's our frequency and vibration as coaches and teachers, where all we're doing is holding the space for the challenges that we've been through, that we transcended. And that activates within those who are in our field, because not everybody is meant to be, quote unquote, someone in our presence to discover aspects of themselves. Whoever shows up in our world, I've really witnessed, is meant to show up in our world, and we are meant to be the ones to hold the space for them to discover self. And there's thousands of teachers, if not tens of thousands of teachers all over the world, who are really just souls who have been moving through space and time with challenges and have been curious enough to look behind the curtain and discover hidden aspects of self to grow and evolve.
Beautiful. All right. I would love to end with that because this is just perfect ending. And thank you so much for your time. This was lovely and beautiful. And I'm like, wow, I'm enjoying this kind of way of, I wouldn't even say interview, and just hosting this wonderful, beautiful, deep conversation. So this is something I would like to maybe pursue and do more of. A nice discovery.
Yeah, perhaps it was a great conversation. You never know what's going to show up. I love to be surprised, despite being a Taurus. I love spontaneity, which sounds counterintuitive. I've learned to love spontaneity. I realize that Taurus energy doesn't like change and spontaneity when it's more immature.
Mm,
But when it becomes more mature, it loves to go into hidden corners to discover things. It's just a long road through stubbornness to be able to find openness.
wow, that's beautiful. Something new I learned.
Me too.
Wonderful. Okay. Thank you. And maybe we'll continue more series of that. Loved it.
We'll see. So great to connect, Alina. Keep doing what you're doing. You're a beautiful light that's shining for those who need you in their presence to discover themselves. And I look forward to seeing more of what you share. Your posts on social media are wonderful. Thank you for that. You inspire people to be curious and consider life from a different vantage point and perspective. And that's what it's all about. Consideration of other angles of perception to transform and transcend self.
Yeah. to look behind the curtain.
Exactly.
Amazing.